I stood there in torn clothes, pretending to be homeless, knocking on my own son's door. One by one, my own family rejected me. But the daughter-in-law I hated the most. She opened the door and changed everything. Before this story begins, subscribe, like, and comment below. Tell me, what would you do if your own family turned you away? Now, let me tell you what really happened. I never thought my life would come to this. Me, Eleanor Whitmore, standing in the cold with a broken suitcase, my hair hidden under a cheap scarf, my coat torn at the elbows, rehearsing the lie that would shatter my own pride. I wasn't homeless. I wasn't broke. But tonight, I needed to pretend I was. Because money reveals nothing. Power reveals nothing. But desperation. Desperation exposes the truth of people's hearts. I owned 3 properties, had 7 figures in savings, and a successful real estate empire I built from nothing. My late husband used to say I had ice in my veins. Maybe he was right. I raised my son, Victor, alone after his father died, sacrificed sleep, youth, and love to make sure he never lacked anything. And this is how he repaid me. 6 months earlier, Victor had married Lena, the woman I despised. She was quiet, too quiet. She never challenged me, never argued, never tried to impress me. She didn't wear designer labels or fake smiles. She looked me in the eye when I spoke, and somehow that made me feel exposed. I told myself she was lazy, weak, a gold digger in disguise. Convinced Victor she wasn't good enough, and when he chose her over me, something inside me hardened. That's when I decided to disappear. I told no one. I shut down my accounts, transferred ownership of my assets into a blind trust, and spread a simple rumor through a mutual acquaintance. Eleanor lost everything. Bad investments, legal trouble, bankrupt. I waited. Not one call, not one message. So I went further. I sold my jewelry, bought thrift store clothes, and rented a cheap room across town. Then, on a freezing Sunday evening, I stood outside my son's house, the same house I had helped him buy, and knocked. The door opened. Victor froze. His eyes flicked to my clothes, my suitcase, my trembling hands. "Mom," he whispered, "what are you doing here?" I need help," I said softly. "I've got nowhere else to go." His face tightened, not with concern but fear. "Lena," he called over his shoulder, "my mom's here." She appeared behind him, holding a dish towel. When she saw me, her eyes widened, not in disgust, but shock. Victor stepped outside and closed the door behind him. "Mom, you can't stay here," he said quickly. "Things are complicated." "Complicated," I repeated. "I raised you. I have nowhere to sleep." He lowered his voice. "Lena's pregnant. Stress isn't good for her. And honestly, you've never liked her." I laughed, a hollow sound. "So now, I'm a problem." He sighed. "I'll give you some money. A hotel for a few nights." "I don't need money," I said. "I need family." He hesitated, then handed me a few bills like I was a stranger on the street. "I'm sorry," he said, already opening the door again. The door shut. I stood there for a long time. Then I went to my daughter's house. Angela had always been my favorite, successful, outspoken, just like me. If anyone would help, it would be her. She didn't even open the door. She spoke through the intercom. "I heard what happened," she said. "I can't get involved. My husband doesn't want drama." I wanted to scream. Instead, I thanked her politely. By the time I reached the 3rd house, my hands were numb. She let me in long enough to give me leftovers and a blanket. "You made your bed," she said. "You always pushed people too hard." And then she asked me to leave before midnight. That's when I realized something terrifying. I had raised my children to respect, strength, not loyalty. The last place left was the one swore I'd never go. Lena's apartment. Not Victor's. House. Hers. A modest building, 2nd floor, warm light spilling from behind the curtains. I stood there shaking, not from cold, but from pride. I knocked. Footsteps approached. The door opened, and the woman I had insulted, undermined, and tried to erase from my son's life, looked at me and said softly, "Mom, you look freezing. Please come inside." No questions. No hesitation. She took my suitcase from my hand, and that was the moment my entire world began to crack. Lena closed the door behind us gently, as if she were afraid a loud sound might break me. The apartment smelled of soup and warm bread. It wasn't fancy, no marble counters, no expensive art, just a clean, lived-in space, a small couch with a folded blanket, children's drawings taped to the fridge. Even though she was only a few months pregnant, and a single lamp casting soft light across the room. "You can sit here," she said, guiding me to the couch. "Your hands are ice cold." I watched her quietly remove her own sweater and place it around my shoulders. That sweater should have disgusted me. It was cheap, plain, probably bought on sale. Instead, it felt warmer than anything I'd worn in years. "Do you want soup?" she asked. "I just made lint. It's simple, but I don't deserve it," I said suddenly. She paused, ladle hovering over the pot. "Everyone deserves to eat," she replied, as if it were the most obvious truth in the world. I swallowed hard. She set a bowl in front of me, steam rising gently. My stomach betrayed me with a growl. I hadn't eaten since morning, not because I lacked money, but because I needed to feel the hunger. I needed the test to be real. I took the spoon with shaking fingers. "Thank you," I whispered. She sat across from me, hands folded over her belly, not hovering, not interrogating, just present. "I didn't know you were struggling," she said softly. "Victor didn't say anything." "Of course he didn't. He wouldn't," I replied. "It's easier to forget people when they fall." She didn't defend him. That surprised me. Instead, she said, "You can stay here as long as you need." The words hit me harder than any insult ever had. "You live here alone," I said carefully. "You don't even know if I'm telling the truth." She met my eyes. "Calm, steady. I know," she said, "but I also know what it's like to have nowhere else to go." Something twisted inside my chest. I had never asked her about her past. I never cared to. After dinner, she showed me the small guest room, really just a storage room with a narrow bed. She laid fresh sheets, placed a towel on the chair, and plugged in a small heater. "I'll bring extra blankets," she said, "and if you need anything in the night, please wake me." I nodded, unable to speak. When the door closed, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my hands. These hands had signed million-dollar contracts, fired employees without blinking, slammed doors in faces. And yet, the only person who had opened a door for me tonight was the woman I hated. Sleep didn't come easily. Memories crept in. Every sharp comment I had thrown at Lena. "She's too quiet. She's manipulating you. She's pretending to be humble. She won't last." I had never once asked her if she was happy. The next morning, I woke to the sound of sizzling breakfast. No one had cooked breakfast for me in years. She was standing at the stove, hair loosely tied, humming softly. When she noticed me, she smiled. "Good morning. I hope eggs are okay." I nodded again, still stunned. We ate together in silence, comfortable silence. Afterward, she handed me a mug of tea. "Mom," she said hesitantly, "I want to be honest with you. Here it comes." I thought. "Conditions, rules. I don't have much," she continued, "but what I have, I share. Still, Victor doesn't know you're here, and he's been distant lately." I studied her face. No bitterness, just concern. "Why do you help me?" I asked bluntly. She considered the question. "My mother-in-law hated me too," she said quietly. "She died last year." I stiffened. "She never accepted me," Lena continued. "But when she got sick, she had no one. Her son lived abroad. Everyone else disappeared." Her voice softened. "I stayed, not because she deserved it, but because I didn't want to become someone who only loves people when it's easy." The words landed like a verdict. For days, I stayed. She refused payment, refused favors, refused pity. She woke early to work remotely. She cooked simple meals. She rested when her back hurt. She asked me nothing except small things: to stir a pot, to water the plant by the window. No lectures, no resentment. On the fourth night, Victor came unannounced. I was folding laundry when the door burst open. "What the hell is she doing here?" he snapped. Lena stepped between us instinctively. "She's staying with me," she said. "Are you crazy?" he said. "After everything she said to you." I waited. I deserved the silence. But Lena didn't look at me with hatred. "She's cold. She's alone," she said. "And she's family." Victor scoffed. "She never treated you like family." "That's true," Lena said calmly, "but I don't want to become her." He turned to me. "Mom, you can't manipulate her. This isn't some game." My chest tightened. "If I wanted to manipulate," I said quietly, "I wouldn't have chosen poverty." He froze. Something in my tone unsettled him. "Let her stay," Lena said firmly, "at least until she's back on her feet." Victor stormed out. That night, Lena knocked on my door. "I'm sorry," she said. "He shouldn't have spoken to you like that." I looked at her, really looked. "You don't owe me anything," I said. "I spent years making your life harder." She smiled sadly. "Maybe, but people don't grow by being punished forever. That was the moment I decided. The test was over, but the lesson had only begun, because Lena didn't know who I really was, and when she did, everything would change. I woke before dawn, not because of noise, but because of guilt. It sat on my chest like a weight, heavier than hunger, heavier than pride. Lena was asleep in the next room, breathing softly, one hand resting protectively over her stomach. I stood in the doorway longer than I should have, watching the woman I had spent years resenting, now sheltering me without asking for anything in return. I had planned this experiment carefully, too carefully. What I hadn't planned for was decency. I made tea and sat by the window, watching the city wake up, people rushing to work, buses groaning, life moving forward without any regard for my little test. For the first time in decades, I wasn't in control of the narrative. I was just another old woman in borrowed clothes, hiding behind the lie dot. When Lena woke, she noticed immediately. "You didn't sleep well," she said gently. "I slept," I replied. "I just didn't rest." She nodded, as if she understood exactly what I meant. That morning, she left for a prenatal appointment. I insisted she take a taxi, but she refused. "We need to save where we can," she said with a small smile. Save, the word stung. I watched her leave, then did something I hadn't done in years. I cleaned, not because it needed it. The apartment was already spotless, but because I needed to feel useful. I scrubbed surfaces, organized cabinets, folded baby clothes that hadn't even been worn yet, tiny socks, tiny shirts, evidence of a future that didn't revolve around wealth or power. In the bottom of one drawer, I found paperwork, medical bills, stacks of them, prenatal visits, blood tests, ultrasounds, all partially paid, many overdue. My throat tightened. She wasn't just kind, she was struggling. When she came back, she looked exhausted. Her feet were swollen. She tried to hide it, but I noticed. "The appointment went okay?" I asked. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Yes, the baby's healthy. That's what matters." I hesitated. "And you?" I asked. She paused, surprised by the question. "I'm okay," she said automatically. I waited. She sighed. "Just tired. Victor and we're not in a great place." I almost laughed at the understatement. "He barely comes home," she continued. "When he does, he's distant. I know he resents me for not being more. I repeated. "More like you," she said quietly. The irony nearly broke me. "He tells me stories," she went on, "about how strong you were, how you never depended on anyone, how you built everything yourself." She looked down at her hands. "I think he wanted me to be fearless like that, but I'm not fearless. I'm just trying. I had mistaken quiet resilience for weakness. That afternoon, Victor called. I heard her voice tense as she answered. "Yes, she's still here. No, she's not causing problems. I know you don't like it." Her shoulders sagged. When she hung up, she apologized. "I'm sorry if this is uncomfortable for you." "For me," I said sharply, then softened my tone. "You're the one being pulled apart." She gave a sad smile. "Marriage does that sometimes." I had torn mine apart with control. That night, I made a decision I had avoided for weeks. I would tell her the truth. Not all of it, not yet, but enough. After dinner, I asked her to sit with me. "There's something you should know," I said. She stiffened slightly but nodded. "I didn't come here entirely by accident," I admitted. "I needed help. Yes, but I also needed to understand something." She waited, eyes steady. "I wanted to see who would open their door to me when I had nothing." Her brow furrowed. "Why?" "Because when my husband died," I said slowly, "everyone wanted what I had, not who I was." I watched her reaction carefully. "And what did you find?" she asked. I swallowed. "I found that I raised my children to admire strength, but not kindness." She said nothing. "I went to Victor first," I continued. "Then Angela, then my sister." Her lips parted slightly. "They all turned me away." She reached out instinctively and placed her hand over mine. "I'm sorry," she whispered. That simple compassion nearly shattered me. "You were the last place," I said, "and I didn't expect you to help me." "Why?" she asked softly. I forced myself to answer honestly. "Because I never gave you a reason to." She leaned back, absorbing that. "You didn't tell Victor this," she said. "No." She nodded slowly. "Then I won't either. Your story is yours." I looked at her in disbelief. "You don't want to know more?" She smiled gently. "If you want me to know, you'll tell me. Trust isn't something I demand." That night, I cried quietly into the pillow. Not because I was weak, but because I had been wrong. The next morning, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived, official, legal, addressed to me. Lena handed it over without opening it. I stared at the return address. My law firm. The trust. The clock was ticking. Soon, the truth would come out whether I was ready or not, and when it did, I would have to choose: protect my pride, or finally become the woman Lena already believed I could be. I didn't open the letter right away. I slid it beneath the folded laundry on the table, as if hiding it there could stop time itself. Lena noticed, of course. She noticed everything, not in a suspicious way, but in the quiet, observant way of someone who has learned to read the room to survive. You don't have to open it now, she said gently. Whatever it is, it can wait until you're ready. That was the problem. I wasn't ready. Because once that envelope was opened, the fragile reality I'd built inside this small apartment would begin to fracture. The woman Lena saw, tired, humbled, broken, would start to disappear, and in her place would stand Eleanor Whitmore again, the woman people feared, the woman people used, the woman no one loved without conditions. For the first time in my life, I didn't want that power back. Days passed. I stayed. Lena never treated me like a burden. She involved me in her routines, asked my opinion on baby names, laughed when I told her old stories about Victor as a child, listened without judgment when I admitted my mistakes. One afternoon, while folding clothes together, she said something that cut deeper than any accusation. I hope my child grows up knowing that love doesn't have to be earned. I froze. That sentence alone exposed everything I'd done wrong as a mother. I had made love transactional, conditional, performance-based. Victor had learned that affection came from achievement, from obedience, from strength. And Lena loved without scorecards. That evening, Victor showed up again. This time, he didn't knock. He walked in, eyes sharp, jaw clenched, already angry. We need to talk, he said. Lena stood up slowly. Then talk, don't explode. He looked between us. How long is she planning to stay? I answered before Lena could. As long as she have me. Victor's face hardened. This is exactly what I warned you about, he said to Lena. She always has. Something in Lena snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, but firmly. No, she said. What you warned me about was losing control. Silence filled the room. Victor stared at her, as if seeing her for the first time. She hasn't asked me for anything, Lena continued. Not money, not favors, not forgiveness. She helps, she listens, she respects my space. He scoffed. You don't know her like I do. That's true, Lena said calmly, but I know how she treats me now, and that matters. Victor turned to me. What are you doing here, Mom? Really? I met his eyes, the same eyes I once cradled with pride, and realized something devastating. He was afraid, not of losing Lena, of losing control over the narrative he'd built about me. I'm learning, I said simply. He laughed bitterly. You, learning? Yes, I replied. That strength without kindness creates lonely children. His face flushed. So now, you're blaming me. I'm blaming myself, I said quietly, for teaching you the wrong lessons. He shook his head. This is exactly why I didn't want you here. And yet, Lena said, placing a hand on her belly, this is where she's safe. Victor stormed out again. This time, he didn't come back the next day. Or the next. Lena pretended not to notice. But I saw the way she checked her phone, the way she flinched at footsteps in the hallway, the way she rubbed her stomach when she thought no one was watching. One night, I found her crying quietly in the bathroom. I knocked softly. Lena, she wiped her face quickly. I'm okay. I sat beside her anyway. Is pulling away, she whispered. I don't know how to fix it. I took her hand. You didn't break him, I said, and it's not your job to rebuild him. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. I don't want my child growing up in a divided home. Neither did I, but I had already done that damage once. The next morning, the letter was still there, waiting. I finally opened it. Inside were documents, updates about the trust, asset reports, legal confirmations, everything intact, everything ready to be reclaimed the moment I chose. At the bottom was a handwritten note from my attorney, Eleanor. The longer this arrangement continues, the more complicated it becomes. Your family has begun making inquiries. You should prepare for disclosure. The word felt like a threat. That afternoon, Lena received a call that changed everything. her face drained of color as she listened. Yes, I understand. Thank you for letting me know. She hung up slowly. The clinic called, she said. Insurance denied the last claim. My heart dropped. What does that mean? It means I have to postpone some tests, she said quietly. They're not urgent, but they're important. How much? I asked. She shook her head. It's okay. I'll figure it out. I stood up. No, I said. You won't. I went to my room and pulled out the emergency cash I'd kept hidden. Not much, just enough. When I handed it to her, she froze. I can't take this, she said. You can, I replied, and you will, not as charity, as family. Her eyes filled with tears. You don't owe me anything, she whispered. I owe you more than you'll ever know, I said. She hugged me then, not carefully, not politely, but tightly, and in that moment, I understood something terrifying and beautiful. If the truth came out now, I wouldn't just lose my test, I might lose her trust. But if I stayed silent, I would become complicit in her suffering. The price of silence was no longer mine alone, and soon, I would have to decide which mattered more, the truth, or the fragile family I had finally found. The money changed something between us. Not in the way I feared, not greed, not suspicion, but awareness. Lena became quieter after that, not distant, just thoughtful. I noticed the way her eyes lingered on me when she thought I wasn't looking, the way she hesitated before accepting groceries I brought home, the way she insisted on showing me every receipt as if transparency could protect us both from unspoken questions. I had underestimated her again. She didn't ask where the money came from, but she knew it hadn't come from nowhere. That night, she sat across from me at the small kitchen table, the glow from the overhead lights softening her features. You don't have to explain, she said carefully, but I need to know one thing. I nodded. Ask, are you in trouble? She asked. Real trouble. The question was layered, legal, financial, emotional. No, I answered honestly, not the kind you're thinking of. She exhaled slowly. That's all I needed to hear. But the truth was already straining against its seams. The next morning, Victor returned. This time, he looked different, less angry, more calculating. He barely acknowledged Lena, his eyes fixed on me. We need to talk, alone, he said. Lena straightened. If you're going to shout, I won't, he interrupted. I promise. She looked at me, silently asking if I was okay. I'll be fine, I said. We stepped into the hallway. Victor crossed his arms. You've been here long enough. I haven't overstayed, I replied. I was invited, he scoffed. By her. Because she doesn't know you. Or because she does, I countered. He lowered his voice. What are you playing at? I'm not playing, I said. You always are, he snapped. You never do anything without an angle. I studied him, the tension in his jaw, the defensiveness. You're afraid, I said softly. He laughed sharply. Of what? Of losing the version of me you learned to manage, I replied. If I change, you don't know where you stand. His expression flickered. You taught me to survive, he said. To win. I taught you to dominate, I said quietly. There's a difference. He turned away, pacing. You don't belong here, he said finally. You're poisoning my marriage. That hurt more than I expected. I didn't create the cracks, I said. I just stopped pretending they weren't there. He looked back at me, eyes hard. If Lena gets hurt, he said, that's on you. No, I said firmly. If Lena gets hurt, it's because you chose control over connection. He clenched his fist, then left without another word. Inside, Lena pretended to be busy, but her shoulders relaxed when she saw me return. Everything okay? She asked. For now, I said. That evening, something unexpected happened. Angela called. My daughter hadn't reached out once since turning me away. I let it ring. Then again. On the third call, I answered. What do you want? I asked bluntly. Her voice was tight. Victor says, you're living with Lena. Yes. Are you insane? She snapped. Do you know what people are saying? I smiled bitterly. People didn't say much when I was starving. She paused. Ma, if this is some kind of stunt, it's not, I said. But if it were, it worked. I know exactly who I can count on. Her tone softened slightly. Come stay with me. We'll figure something out. Your door was closed, I reminded her. I don't forget that. She swallowed audibly. You're punishing us. No, I said. I'm learning. When I hung up, my hands were shaking. Lena had overheard enough to piece things together. You have other places to go, she said quietly. Yes. And you chose to stay here. Yes. Why? She asked. finally voicing the question she'd been holding back for days. Because you opened the door when I was no one. But I didn't say that instead. I said, because this is the only place I wasn't asked what I could offer. She nodded slowly. That night, she woke me. Her face was pale, her breathing shallow. My chest feels tight, she whispered. And I'm dizzy. Fear sliced through me. I didn't hesitate. I called a car, grabbed her coat, held her steady as we rushed to the hospital. At the emergency room, they asked questions. Insurance, information payment. I stepped forward. I'll handle it, I said. The receptionist looked at me skeptically. I said, I'll handle it, I repeated, sharper this time. Hours passed. Tests, monitors, waiting. Finally, the doctor came out. She's stable, he said. Stress-related complications. She needs rest and support. I sat beside Lena's bed as she slept, holding her hand, protecting her, like a mother should. And in that sterile hospital room, surrounded by beeping machines and thin blankets, I understood something. I could never undo that. This was no longer a test. This was a reckoning. Because if the truth came out now, about who I really was, about the wealth I hid, about the lie I'd lived inside her home, she might feel betrayed. And betrayal cuts deeper when it comes from kindness. As dawn crept through the window, Lena stirred. She looked at me, confused, then smiled weakly. You stayed, she murmured. Of course, I said. Where else would I be? She squeezed my hand. Thank you, Mom. The word echoed in my chest like a bell. She had claimed me. Now I had to decide if I was worthy of it. Lena was discharged 2 days later. But the hospital visit changed everything. Not just for her. For me. The doctors were clear. Stress was becoming dangerous. She needed calm, stability, support. And every word they said felt like an accusation carved directly into my spine. Because I was the storm standing inside her home, back at the apartment. Lena moved slower. She smiled the same, spoke the same. But I noticed how she rested her hand on walls when she walked, how she paused before climbing the stairs, how exhaustion clung to her like a shadow she refused to acknowledge. Victor didn't come to the hospital. He sent one text. Let me know when she's home. That was it. Lena read it and said nothing, but I saw her jaw tighten, saw the hurt flicker behind her eyes before she buried it under patience. That night, while she slept, I sat alone at the kitchen table with the truth spread out in front of me. Bank statements, trust documents, property deeds, all neatly organized in a folder I'd carried for weeks like a loaded weapon. I had told myself I was testing my family. That was the lie. I used to sleep at night. The real truth was uglier. I'd wanted to be rejected. Because rejection would justify the bitterness I'd been carrying for years. It would confirm my belief that love was transactional, that kindness was weakness, that loyalty only existed where money lived. But Lena had ruined that lie. The next morning, she found me still sitting there. You didn't sleep, she said. I did. I lied. She poured tea for both of us and sat down slowly. You paid for the hospital, she said quietly. Yes. She looked at me carefully. You said you weren't in trouble. I'm not. And you said you didn't have much. I closed my eyes. The moment had arrived. I didn't say that. I corrected softly. I said I needed help. She inhaled deeply. I need you to be honest with me now. I opened my eyes. The disappointment on her face would hurt more than anger. I knew that. There are things about me you don't know, I said. And once I say them, I can't take them back. She nodded. I understand. I slid the folder toward her. She hesitated before opening it as she read. Her brow furrowed, confusion turning slowly into disbelief. This can't be right, she whispered. These numbers, they're mine, I said. Or they were. I put everything into a trust before I came here. She looked up sharply. You're saying you're not broke? No. You're not homeless? No. Her hands began to tremble. You lied to me, she said, voice barely audible. Yes. The word hung between us like smoke. Why? She asked. Because I wanted to know if anyone would love me without my money. But that sounded selfish even in my own head. Because I didn't trust anyone, I said, and I wanted proof that kindness still existed. She stood abruptly, breathing uneven. You used me, she said. You used my home, my food, my trust. No, I said quickly. I never meant to, but you did, she interrupted. Whether you meant to or not. Her eyes filled with tears. And that hurt worse than any insult Victor had ever thrown at me. I opened my door because I thought you had nothing, she said, because I thought you were vulnerable. I was I said hoarsely. Just not in the way you believed. She laughed bitterly. Do you have any idea how humiliating that feels? I stood, my own voice shaking. I never took advantage of you. I never withheld help when you needed it. But you let me believe you were powerless, she said. You let me feel responsible for you. She pressed a hand to her stomach, breathing hard. I can't do this, she whispered. I can't process this right now. I stepped back immediately. I'll leave, I said. Today, I promise. She didn't respond. She went into the bedroom and closed the door. I packed silently. Every folded blanket felt like an accusation. Every mug I washed felt like a goodbye I didn't deserve. As I reached for my coat, the door opened. Lena stood there, eyes red, face exhausted. Don't leave angry, she said. That's how people disappear forever. I nodded. Tell me what you need. She took a long breath. I need time, she said, and I need space, but I also need honesty. All of it. You'll have it, I said. She hesitated. Victor doesn't know, does he? No. Her expression hardened slightly. Good, because I need to decide what this means before he turns it into another battlefield. I left that day. Not dramatically, not loudly. Just quietly, like someone who finally understood the cost of deception. I checked into a hotel I could have bought outright, and for the first time in my life, the luxury felt unbearable. Angela called again. So did Victor. I ignored both. 3 days later, Lena called. I've been thinking, she said, about intention versus impact. My heart pounded. And you hurt me, she said plainly, but you also protected me when it mattered. Yes, I don't trust you yet, she continued, but I don't hate you either. I exhaled shakily. There's something else, she said. Victor wants to meet all of us tonight. I closed my eyes. The reckoning had arrived, because the truth doesn't just demand honesty, it demands consequences, and soon, my son would learn exactly who his mother was, and who his wife had become. The restaurant Victor chose was expensive, the kind of place where menus had no prices and silence was enforced by linen and low lighting. It was a message. He wanted control. I arrived early, not because I was nervous, but because I needed the extra minutes to prepare myself. I wore a simple coat, no jewelry, no signs of wealth, not out of deception this time, but out of respect. Lena didn't need another reminder of what I had hidden. She arrived next. When she saw me, she paused. Not cold, not warm. Careful. Double quotes. Thank you for coming, she said. Thank you for asking. I replied. Victor came last. He looked irritated before he even sat down. I don't have much time, he said, so let's be clear about why we're here. Lena folded her hands on the table. We're here because things can't continue the way they are. He scoffed. Things were fine before she moved in. No, Lena said calmly. They were quiet. That's not the same. Victor turned to me. Whatever game you're playing ends tonight. I met his gaze steadily. There is no game anymore. The waiter came. Victor ordered without looking at Lena. She waited, then ordered something small. I noticed that Victor did and single quotes T. As soon as the waiter left, Victor leaned forward. So, he said, when were you planning to tell us you're still rich? Lena stiffened. I looked at her. He knows. She nodded once. I told him this afternoon. Victor's jaw clenched. You humiliated me, he snapped. Do you have any idea how this makes me look? Lena's voice sharpened. That's your concern. Of course it is, he said. She made a fool of all of us. I made a fool of myself, I said quietly. You just showed who you are when money disappears. He laughed bitterly. You vanished. You let us think you were nothing, and you let me starve. I replied. Silence. Lena inhaled slowly. Victor, when your mother showed up at our door, you sent her away. She's manipulative, he shot back. She always has been. And yet, Lena said, when I needed help, real help, she was there. You weren't. His face darkened. That's not fair. It's not kind either, she replied. He turned to me. You paid for the hospital to make yourself look good. No, I said. I paid because your wife and unborn child needed care. You undermined me, he said. I protected her, I answered. The waiter returned with drinks. The tension was thick enough to choke on. Lena looked at Victor, then really looked at him. Do you know why I let her stay? She asked. He shrugged. Because you felt sorry for her. No, Lena said, because she treated me with respect. He stared at her. That's insane. She listened, Lena continued. She helped, without controlling. She didn't remind me of what she'd done for me. She didn't make love conditional. My throat tightened. Victor scoffed. She raised me. Of course she made love conditional. That's how you survive. Lena shook her head. That's how you harden. Victor turned to me. Is this what you want? To turn her against me? No, I said. I want you to see what you're becoming. He slammed his hand on the table. You're jealous. I blinked. Of what? Of my life, he said. Of my family. Lena stood. That was when I knew something irreversible was happening. I won't sit here and listen to you reduce this to ego, she said. This is about trust and responsibility and who shows up when things get hard. Victor stood too. Sit down. No, she said firmly. You don't get to command me. People nearby glanced over. She didn't care. When I was in the hospital, Lena continued, voice steady despite the tremor beneath it. I waited for you. I defended you. I told myself you were busy. Victor opened his mouth. And then your mother walked in, she said, turning to me briefly, and she didn't leave my side. Tears filled her eyes. She held my hand while I was scared. Lena said, she spoke to the doctors. She made decisions when I couldn't. Victor looked stunned. You didn't even come, Lena said softly. He looked away. I didn't know it was that serious. That's the problem, she replied. You never know, because you don't ask. Silence stretched, but finally, Victor said, so what? You want me to apologize? I want you to grow, Lena said, before our child learns the same emptiness you did. That cut him. I could see it. He turned to me. Is this why you did it? The lie. To prove I'm a failure. No, I said. I did it because I was tired of being feared instead of loved. And I raised you to fear weakness. I swallowed. That's on me. For the first time, Victor looked uncertain. The waiter returned with food. No one touched it. Lena sat down slowly. Here's what's going to happen, she said. Victor stared at her. I'm staying at my sister's for a while, she said. I need peace. His face paled. You're leaving me. I'm giving us a chance, she said, but only if things change. She turned to me. And you, she said, are welcome to see me, to be involved, but no secrets. I nodded. Never again. Victor looked between us, panic rising. You're choosing her over me? He asked Lena. She looked at him sadly. I'm choosing our child. She stood, paid for her meal, and walked away. Victor didn't follow. He just sat there, staring at the table. I stood. Victor, I said quietly, this isn't the end, but it is the consequence. He didn't respond. As I left the restaurant, I realized something profound, but for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one breaking a family apart. I was the one finally telling the truth. And sometimes, truth doesn't destroy families, it exposes the cracks that were already there. Lena moved into her sister's apartment 2 days later. Not in anger, not in chaos, just quietly, like someone who had finally accepted that peace was not something you waited for, but something you chose. I helped her pack. Not because she asked, she didn't, but because she allowed me to. That mattered more. We folded baby clothes together again, but this time there was weight in every movement. The air was heavy with things unsaid, with futures uncertain. Her sister Maya watched me closely at first, guarded, skeptical, but Lena's calm presence seemed to reassure her. She's been good to me, Lena said simply, when Maya hesitated. That was all the defense I needed. Victor didn't show up. He sent messages, long ones, angry ones, then apologetic ones, then silence. Lena read none of them. She needs space. I told him when he finally called me. He scoffed. You've turned her against me. No, I said. You pushed her away long before I arrived. He hung up. For weeks, life slowed into something unfamiliar. Quiet. Lena rested more, ate better, laughed occasionally, soft laughs, but real. I drove her to appointments, sat in waiting rooms, learned the rhythm of her breathing when she slept. I didn't offer solutions. I offered presence. And for a woman who had spent her life fixing, controlling, commanding, it was the hardest thing I had ever done. One afternoon, after an ultrasound, Lena held the picture in her hands and stared at it for a long time. She has your nose, I said lightly. Lena smiled faintly. You don't even know if it's a girl. I have a feeling, I replied. She looked at me then, eyes thoughtful. Do you regret it? I asked. The test, she said. The lie. I didn't answer immediately. Yes, I said finally. And no. She waited. I regret hurting you, I continued, deeply. I regret not trusting you from the beginning, but I don't regret learning the truth about myself. She nodded slowly. Growth rarely comes without damage. That sentence stayed with me. Victor finally asked to meet again. Just him and me. against my better judgment. I agreed. We met at a park neutral ground. He looked exhausted, unshaven, older. I'm losing my family, he said without greeting. You already lost something, I replied. You just didn't notice. He rubbed his face. She won't come home. She didn't leave to punish you, I said. She left to survive. He looked at me bitterly. You always take her side. I take the side of what's right, I said. I didn't when you were a child, and I won't make that mistake again. That stung. Do you know what it felt like growing up with you? He asked suddenly, never knowing if I was enough. I swallowed hard. Yes, I said, because my mother did the same to me. His anger faltered. She loved me, he said. So did mine, I replied. But love doesn't erase damage. We sat in silence for a long time. I don't know how to be what she needs, he admitted. That's the first honest thing you've said, I replied. Start there. He looked at me, something raw in his eyes. Did you ever love Dad? Yes, I said without hesitation. Then why were you so hard? He asked. Because I was terrified, I said. Terrified of losing him, terrified of being powerless, terrified of being abandoned. He nodded slowly. Lena is terrified too, I added, but she still chooses kindness. He closed his eyes. I don't want my child to fear me, he said quietly. Then stop trying to control everything, I replied, and start showing up. Weeks passed. Victor began therapy, not consistently at first, defensively, but he went. That mattered. He sent Lena messages without demands, without guilt, just accountability. I'm sorry. I'm learning. I'll wait. She didn't respond, but she noticed that one evening. Lena invited me to dinner at Maya's place, just the three of us. Afterward, Lena asked Maya to give us a moment alone. She turned to me. I'm thinking about forgiving him, she said. My heart tightened. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, she continued, and it doesn't mean returning to what was. I nodded. It means redefining. She smiled slightly. You've changed. I had to, I said. You didn't leave me room not to. She reached out and squeezed my hand. I want you in my child's life, she said, not as someone powerful, but as someone present. Tears filled my eyes. I can do that, I whispered. I want to. That night, alone in my hotel room, I looked at my reflection. For the first time in decades, I didn't see a strategist. I saw a woman, still learning, still repairing, still capable of becoming better than who she had been. The trust fund remained untouched. The properties sat unused. For the first time, wealth felt secondary. Because real inheritance wasn't money. It was what you modeled, what you protected, what you healed, and in the quiet that followed the storm, something fragile and new was growing. Not certainty, not perfection, but hope. The baby came early. Not dangerously early, but early enough to remind all of us that life does not wait for people to finish their arguments, heal their pride, or make perfect apologies. It was just past midnight when my phone rang. I knew before I answered. Mom, Lena's voice said, tight with pain but steady. It's time. I was dressed and out the door in under 3 minutes. At the hospital. The lights were harsh and the air smelled like antiseptic and urgency. Maya was already there, pacing. When she saw me, she nodded. No suspicion now, only relief. Victor's on his way, she said. Lena was in labor for hours, hours where fear crept in, at the edges of every heartbeat, where I sat beside her bed and held her hand exactly the way she had held mine when I was pretending to be nothing. She screamed once, just once, and apologized immediately. I'm sorry, she gasped. I don't usually. I leaned close and said firmly, you never apologize for pain, ever. Her grip tightened. Victor arrived just before dawn. He looked terrified, not angry, not defensive, terrified. When he saw Lena, something in him cracked open. He dropped to his knees beside the bed, tears spilling freely. I'm here, he whispered. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Lena looked at him, really looked. She didn't forgive him in that moment, but she didn't push him away either. And sometimes, that's the beginning. The baby's cry filled the room just as the sun rose. A girl, small, strong, loud, perfect. They placed her on Lena's chest, and the room fell silent in that sacred way that only new life can create. Victor sobbed openly. Maya wiped her eyes. I stood back intentionally, not claiming a space I hadn't earned yet. Then, Lena looked at me and held out her free hand. I stepped forward. When the nurse asked who I was, Lena answered before I could. Her grandmother. The words settled into me like a promise. Later that morning, when Lena was resting and the baby slept in the clear plastic crib, Victor approached me in the hallway. I owe you an apology, he said quietly. I raised a hand. Not yet. He looked surprised. First, I said, you apologize to your wife, not with words, but with consistency. He nodded. I will. And second, I continued, you understand something. What? I didn't test you to punish you, I said, but the truth did punish you anyway. That doesn't mean you're irredeemable. His shoulders sagged. I was so afraid of being controlled that I became controlling. Yes, I said, and now you have a chance to stop. He looked through the glass at his daughter. I don't want her to grow up afraid, he whispered. Then don't teach her fear, I replied. Teach her safety. That afternoon, something happened I didn't expect. Angela arrived. My daughter stood awkwardly in the doorway, holding flowers, eyes darting nervously when she saw me. I heard about the baby, she said. Lena smiled politely. Thank you for coming. Angela turned to me. I didn't know, she said quietly, about any of it. You didn't ask, I replied, not cruelly, just honestly. She swallowed. I was ashamed. I know, I said. So was I. We stood there, two women who had spent years confusing strength with distance. I turned you away, she said. I can't stop thinking about it. I stood at your door to learn the truth, I replied, and I learned it. She nodded, tears forming. Can we start again? I looked at Lena. She watched us carefully, not judging, not controlling, just observing. Yes, I said finally, but differently. Angela exhaled, relief breaking through her grief. When she left, Lena looked at me. You didn't protect her feelings, she said, but you didn't punish her either. I'm done doing both, I said. I tell the truth now. She smiled softly. That evening, Victor stayed, not hovering, not directing. Just present. He changed diapers badly. He listened. He waited. Lena noticed. I noticed. And for the first time, I saw the boy I once loved fiercely before I taught him that love had to be earned. A few days later, I made the decision I'd been postponing. I asked Lena to meet me alone. I want to set something straight, I said, once and for all. She nodded. I don't want control over your life, I continued. Not now, not ever. She waited. I'm rewriting my will, I said. The trust, the properties, everything. Her eyes widened slightly. You don't have to, I do, I said, because legacy isn't about blood, it's about behavior. I handed her a folder. She didn't open it. I trust you, she said simply. That trust meant more than any signature ever could. I will always help, I continued, but never without your consent, never in ways that trap you, never in ways that make you feel small. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. That's all I ever wanted, she said. That night, back in my hotel room, I realized something astonishing. I didn't want to go back to my old life. Not fully. Not the isolation, not the fear-based authority, not the loneliness disguised as independence. I had pretended to be homeless and broke to test my family. What I found instead was the beginning of a home. And in one more part, everything I thought I knew about inheritance, about who deserves what, would finally be decided. I moved out of the hotel the week after the baby came home, not back into my penthouse, not into any of the houses that carried my name on their deeds. I rented a small place 10 minutes from Lena's neighborhood, modest, sunlit, ordinary, the kind of place my old self would have dismissed without a second glance. It felt right. I didn't announce the move. I didn't explain it. I simply showed up when invited and stayed away when I wasn't. Presence without pressure. Support without strings. It was harder than any business negotiation I'd ever led. Victor started coming by more often at first, awkwardly, carefully, as if every step might trigger an explosion he didn't yet trust wouldn't happen. He asked Lena before making plans. He listened when she said no. He learned to sit with discomfort instead of trying to overpower it. He failed, sometimes, but he stayed. That mattered more. One afternoon, while Lena napped and the baby slept on my chest, impossibly warm, impossibly small, Victor sat across from me and finally asked the question that had been circling us for months. Why did you really do it? He said. I didn't pretend not to understand. Why did you pretend to lose everything? I looked down at my granddaughter, her tiny fingers wrapped around nothing at all, trusting the world completely. Because I was afraid, I said. Of what? That if I stopped being useful, I would stop being loved. Victor swallowed hard. You taught me that, he said quietly, whether you meant to or not. I know, I said, and I'm sorry. The word came easily now. I spent my life making sure no one could hurt me, I continued, and I ended up hurting everyone instead. He nodded slowly. Lena says, love isn't proven in emergencies. It's proven in consistency. She's right, I said. He looked at his daughter. I want to be different for her. You already are, I replied, because you're asking. That night, I finalized my will. Not the one my attorneys had drafted for decades, the one built on bloodlines, percentages, leverage, a new one. It took weeks of thought and more courage than signing away millions ever had. Angela received something enough to be secure, not enough to wield power over others, with a letter attached. Honest, unforgiving, loving. Victor received something different. Not control of assets, not authority, a trust that would activate only if he continued therapy, co-parented respectfully, and never used money to manipulate Lena or their child. Some would call it cruel. I called it responsible. And Lena didn't inherit money. She inherited choice. I placed assets in her name only through structures that required her consent, her approval, her comfort. No surprises. No traps. No hidden obligations. And then I did something no one expected. I left a portion, UNASSIGNED, to be decided later, because legacy should evolve with behavior. When my attorney questioned it, I said something that shocked even me. I don't want my money to outlive my values. The day I told Lena about the will, she didn't react the way people usually do when money is mentioned. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. She didn't thank me. She just said, "Thank you for trusting me." I shook my head. "Thank you for teaching me how." Time passed. The baby grew stronger, louder, more demanding in the beautiful way only new life can be. Victor learned how to soothe her. Lena learned how to rest without guilt. And I learned how to sit on the floor without trying to fix anything. One afternoon, while rocking my granddaughter, Lena said something quietly that I will carry with me until my last breath. "You know," she said, "when you knocked on my door, I almost didn't answer. My heart tightened. Why did you?" She smiled softly. "Because I didn't want my child to grow up in a world where doors stay closed." I closed my eyes. I had knocked on many doors in my life, boardrooms, courts, banks, institutions. None of them had ever changed me that way that one small apartment door had. Months later, at a family gathering, small, imperfect, real, Angela pulled me aside. "You seem lighter," she said. "I am," I replied. She hesitated. "Do you regret it? Losing control?" I looked around the room. Victor feeding his daughter. Lena laughing without fear. A future not built on obedience, but on trust. "No," I said. "I regret waiting so long." That night, alone in my new apartment, I thought back to the woman standing on the doorstep in torn clothes, pretending to be homeless and broke. She believed money was power. She believed control was safety. She believed love had to be earned. She was wrong. I didn't pretend to be homeless to test my family. I pretended to be nothing, and discovered who loved without conditions. And in the end, the greatest inheritance I could leave behind wasn't money. It was a different example. One open door, one broken cycle, one family finally learning what wealth really means.